walk out to the show and fall at your door. We got that info for you. Touchdown on that plane and for anything. More than just a podcast for you.
My son and I had this debate, and I'm curious to hear what you're going to say. Why hasn't the U.S. men's national team achieved the same level of success as the U.S. women's national team? Why aren't they winning the same level of the same number of World Cups? What's different in the men's arena?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. Huh?
That is a loaded question.
We want all the honesty.
I think it goes into similar to what the guys were saying earlier is, a buddy that I played with who was English, and he just kind of said, like, in America, you guys have too many choices, right? So, just imagine if we were in a place and the amount of sports was limited. So you take some of our best athletes in some of our top sports, and they all become soccer players. I think it's pretty easy that we have at least one World Cup, right? And you look at some of the top football players and basketball players, and all those. How could you stop us? And the other thing is we're the country the size of a continent. So, when you start to look at, the resources are kind of divvied up, whereas in Europe and other places, like, it's very concentrated. So, their development systems and things like that are very concentrated. But, like Tucker coming from the West Coast versus playing with the player from the East Coast, there could be two different styles of play and things like that they were taught growing up. And, for our women, there's been like this huge following behind them. And, we're superior to other countries in terms of exposure and opportunity for our female players, even though there's still not equity between the men and the women. So, but I think we're still superior in terms of resources and things like that for our female players, in terms of knowledgeable coaches and things like that will give them a chance that, is not necessarily, practiced around the world. So I think those are my two reasons for the difference between our men's team and our women's team.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say our women's team has had a structure earlier in terms of the college realm. A lot of those top players, back in the day, they were coming from colleges. They had a structure where other countries did not. Now, that doesn't take away from anything that they're doing. But I think that those are one of the things of why the women have been so successful is there was structure. I think as you see now on the men's side, you see more structure with the MLS, USL. You see more of those leagues that are starting to get more structure, which is good. But I still think I agree with JT. Sorry, once you get LeBron James in a soccer jersey, unbelievable. I mean, if you get LeBron James and some of our best athletes, growing up when they were 6, 7, 8, 9 years old playing soccer, now you're getting our best athletes out there playing. And I'm pretty sure that we'd sell lots of jerseys if LeBron James and some of those athletes were out there playing soccer. It would close the gap for us, I think, on the men's side a lot quicker because, what you are seeing is you're seeing our men's national team, which is great, have a lot more diversity. We're getting a little more Hispanic side to us. We're getting some internationals. So I think it's really good that even though we haven't achieved what we wanted to achieve as early as we wanted to, but we are bringing more of diversity and different types of players into our national team, which is good. But, we're catching up where I think on the women, they were already at the top. And they're continue to be at the top, but that gap is closing on them too from some of the other international countries that are spending more money in their women's program to catch up to ours, where we're trying to do the opposite on the men's side. We're trying to spend more money to try to catch up with the rest of the world. And it's going to take time. It's nothing that's going to be done overnight, but I think once we can start trying to get some of our better athletes at a younger age to start playing soccer and keeping them, I think that's a big thing, is keeping our better athletes playing soccer.
Okay.
Who scores on Antonio Davis in the goal, right? Who scores
That's
on
exactly.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, those are all. I agree with all those arguments. And as you can kind of see, the argument is twofold, right? You got the men, and why aren't they competing with the rest of the men's national teams? And then you have the women who are, some may say by far the best women's national team, right? You have England, you have Brazil, you have others that can definitely compete, but when you look at some of the teams that our women's national team is playing, I forget who they played this past World Cup, but they put a team under like some ridiculous amount, like was it 10 or 12 or something like that? I mean, you would never see that at the men's level, and I think that just goes down to like the structure, how much we've invested by giving girls from such a young age this chance to play at this level. In a lot of other countries, that's just not feasible, socially, culturally, right? And so I think that's why our women have excelled so well. And then, right, you have our men's team who's essentially underperforming. And, with some of our younger players playing at these top clubs over in Europe right now, you would hope that it's over the next couple decades that you will start to see the men's national team do a lot better. But it's going to take time. I think, like Curtis was saying, right, we're going to have to see how we can get some more of our better athletes onto the field at a younger age playing soccer, and then how can we retain them and keep them playing soccer. It's definitely a valid argument, right? If we did have our best athletes, which most are playing, basketball, football, even baseball, those athletes on the soccer field from a young age would definitely be competing up there. And while it might be a different style of soccer than what we've seen, I think in terms of pure athleticism, we should technically be the most superior national team out there. So, yeah.
Jacob.
I would think that, someone like Anthony Davis in goal, LeBron James at center back, Tyreek Hill up top, who's basically Messi on the football field. But, I think there are other sports that are competing with soccer and pay a lot better than soccer does in the United States. And I think that competition and that difference in, how much money is being put into these sports is a big difference. As far as the women's team goes, I think, I'm not convinced they couldn't beat our men's team at this point, but
I'm definitely pleasantly surprised. Oh boy, this was a very interesting question. So to hear you guys say our best talent isn't necessarily on the soccer field. Parents, I didn't expect that one, but there you have it. So next question, what's the best club rivalry in soccer?
Right, guys, would you say that El Clasico?
Yeah.
That's the Barcelona versus Real Madrid rivalry. So
Yeah, I got to agree. Classico.
So
Right.
I thought at least one person would say Manchester United. So tell us, those of us who are not soccer people, what's El Clasico and why is this rivalry the absolute best?
I think it gets into that. At one point, it got into that argument between because Messi plays for Barcelona and Ronaldo was playing for Real Madrid. So when you know, when those were two arguably some of the best players in the world, you know, back and forth for that, you know, that soccer Heisman, right? You know, that made that rivalry great to watch because you were watching them go against each other necessarily. But the history of it too, that, you know, for a long time, Barcelona always had some of the top players in the world, you know, going back to, you know, the Diego Maradonas, and Real Madrid was also trying to get some of those really top players as well. But we won't take anything away from that Manchester United versus Manchester City derby either. But I think with historically, I think in longevity of rivalry, you know, I think the El Clasico is probably the biggest one.
So I want to ask this because, you know, soccer novice. So countries within the country, they have like super rivalries within the country, kind of like my equivalent would be like in basketball, Louisville, Kentucky, or UNC Duke. So on the soccer level, at the club level, the rivalries in country like that.
Yes. Like you'd have, like you were saying, Man City, Man United, those two, because they're in the same city. You know, unfortunately, I'm a big Arsenal fan, so Arsenal, Tottenham, which did not go very well for Arsenal fans today.
That hurt today.
But yes, that did hurt. But you have within the city, you usually have two or three big clubs in each country, and those are rivalries to some individually. But I think El Clasico overall is probably, forget about where you are in the world, that's going to be the game that you're definitely going to find a time or TV to watch. But the other ones, you know, are very important to, you know, their fan base. Don't get me wrong, but
I think this is something that I'm learning about soccer because, like I said, Ronald and I were just like, he talked about Real Madrid and Barcelona, and then we talked about Manchester and whatnot. But I don't think it clicked in my brain until you guys just said it, that the rivalries at club level in soccer are like basically like half of a country not liking another half of a country because of a soccer team. Whereas in my brain, I'm like, oh, this is just like a state. Alabama doesn't like Auburn, or Michigan doesn't like Ohio State, but the rest of the world, the people in California may not care. So this is very, very different. I think maybe there's going to be some listeners like me who like it won't click. So that conversation, the very first question, how's it different? This is what you guys really mean. It's city versus city, which is what not necessarily what you see in a basketball or a football or even a baseball. You wouldn't necessarily see half of a city mad at the other half of a city. You might see like in Atlanta versus in New York, but this is a very different type of rivalry, parents, a very, very different type of rivalry. So I learned something new, something very, very new. So we have something called the Tweener series. And with the Tweener series, it's very technical. And so today we want to help our soccer parents learn something technical. So the question of the day for the Tweener series is, what's the difference between the outside backer and the center back? And I want you to speak to like measurables, height, weight, the responsibility that they have on the field, and then a skill set.
What do you look for in those spots, Kurt?
Well, it's funny because I'm thinking we're about to get 4 different answers, because that's the best part about soccer is everyone's, in terms of position, every coach or individually looks for things differently. For me as an outside back, I'm looking for someone that can get into the attack. I'm actually not looking in the defensive aspect of it. I'm looking for someone that can fly up and down the flanks to be able to get into the midfield, to get into the final third. What is their service like? How are they defending 1v1? Out on the flanks defensively for an outside back. Those are things that I'm sort of looking for with the center back. Are they good in the air? Are they reading things early? Are they being vocal? Are they communicating with the rest of the line? Are they communicating with the goalkeeper? Are we stepping? Are we dropping? Those are things that I would look for as a center back. Also, sort of stature wise, center back, that's where I'd want, 6'3", 6'4", someone that can move, that's athletic, that's good in the air, that has a little bit more thickness, that's strong on the ball, that can win tackles, but also be able to help us build out of the back and start our attack from there as well. But we're not asking them to fly up and down the flanks and go, 80, 60 to 80 yards. We're asking them to be able to put their foot on the ball and help us keep it. So as a center back, I'm looking for someone that's big, strong, athletic, that technically that can play. As an outside flanker, I'm looking for someone that can get up and down the flanks, but also is defensively, very good 1v1 when they're out there in wide spaces.
So parents, being good in the air is a thing, but only.
Yes, it is. Lost art.
We'll talk about that. That's another question. I'm like, what's good in the air? They don't say that in any other sport that I'm familiar with. So, Tucker, what's the difference?
Man, I think JT is going to have a little bit more expertise than me. I think you mentioned he was a center back. So, to help out your viewers and the parents who are watching this mainly for college, right? I think it's something that's going to differ slightly from the college to the professional level. Certain things don't matter as much, but in college, typically, Curtis hit on a lot of good points, right? For a center back, you're going to want them a little bit, you want them to be athletic, a little bit bigger and stronger. Height is going to matter a little bit more to a coach in college. They're going to want and that's purely just to win balls in the air, off of like a cross, that you want them to be able to get a head on it, to clear it out. And then for an outside back, it's, overall pace is going to be a big thing. You're going to have a lot of college coaches that want their outside backs to be getting into the attack, like Curtis mentioned. So you're going to want them to be, good on the ball. You want them to be able to, combine with the midfield or, outside midfielders to be able to get into the attack. So yeah, good on the ball, technical with the ball. Let's see, you will find a lot of college coaches that want their left back to be left-footed and their right back to be right-footed, and same with their outside mids. So that's another thing, right? And then, typically you're going to want your left center back to be left-footed and your right center back to be right-footed. So there's a lot of different formations in soccer. That's another thing, right? Is you can come out to the field and you can have 4 in the back, four defenders. You could have 3 defenders. You could have 5 defenders. And the way your team is going to play will change drastically. But a lot of college teams, most college teams these days, are either playing 4 defenders, 4 midfielders, 2 forwards, or 4 defenders, 3 midfielders, 3 forwards. And so the 4 in the back is very, very common. That's where you're going to see most college coaches want their players on the right to be right-footed, players on the left to be left-footed. So it's kind of my tidbit, I guess.
Yes, because good in the air, right-footed and left-footed, those are things. So we'll ask those questions in future shows. Okay then.
Good.
Jacob?
Yeah, I'd just add, in Division III, it's kind of similar to what these guys have talked about. Typically, I like to call them towers. Your center backs are your 2 towers, and those are your taller, stronger, preferably bigger guys that are still technical enough so that you can build and keep possession out of the back. But they can win tackles, they can win headers, and they have a vocal presence for the team moving forward, as they can see more of the field than a lot of the other players. And then for us, our center backs were the type that had to run for days, like overlapping on the outsides, getting into the attack, providing services. And but typically those guys were also pretty fast, as you know, when you're defending outside mids, those are typically fast, quick, skill guys that they need to be able to keep up with as well.
JT?
Yeah, those are all good points. And like Tucker was saying and Jacob was saying, kind of goes into what style of play the team wants to play. So, you know, you look at, you know, we tell people where's the most dangerous part of the field, and it's in the middle because that's where the goals are, right? So, you know, you need someone who can kind of command presence in there and be an organizer, to almost be at a place where like they don't have to do as much work because they've organized enough stuff in front of them that the ball never actually gets to them. So, you know, you need a vocal person, you know, someone who's going to kind of command a presence and be a, you know, be a leader outside of, you know, just adding on to some of the qualities that the other guys have said. And then, you know, your outside defenders or your outside backs, you know, are typically, and I will say this in my experiences, you know, I thought I was a forward for my high school team, right? And then, you know, for my club team and for my college team, I ended up playing outside back because at that time I was pretty thin and fast and stuff like that. And then I started to gain more girth, so to say, as I got into college. But, you know, they want people on the outside that are fast, quick, can hold their own in a 1v1 situation, can, you know, play good passes in, serve good balls in, and help them, you know, be good in the attack. Because if they can attack with more numbers, then they can actually kind of press a team into their half so they can't get out, and then they just kind of stay after them and keep driving.
This is fabulous. I learned so much. I've been taking notes. I've got questions, but I'll save them for the next show. But that was fabulous. I could not have asked for a more detailed. You're right, Curtis. 4 different answers, but very detailed. So I appreciate it. This is really good.